Today, we're going to be able to be ready for Microsoft certification so that we're going to be certified with the Azure fundamentals. So look, without much ado, let me start right away. What is cloud computing? Just an introduction, okay? Today we're going to talk about the introduction of cloud computing, covering things like cloud concepts, like the core concepts of cloud, which is true for Microsoft, Amazon, Google, any cloud platform out there. And then we'll also talk about deployment models for Azure and understanding what shared responsibility principle is. We'll also talk about some of the services, all the services that are deployed on the cloud. That said, a few things that we need to achieve today. It looks like a lot, but at the end of this class, everybody should be able to define what cloud computing is and describe the shared responsibility model. We'll also describe infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and software as a service. We'll also talk about some use cases. When do you get to use each one of these? When is it important? Okay, because when you have a certification, the questions that you'll be asked, they're going to paint a picture for you. For instance, they'll say, hey, you're working for company ABC. They want to move their deployment to the cloud. What do you think they should do? They want to do this, they want to do that, they want to accomplish this. What kind of service will work for them? So that's why we want to talk about those use cases, okay? After that, we'll probably take a short break, maybe 5-10 minutes so that everybody can recoup. And then we'll talk about cloud models, whether it's public, private, hybrid, or maybe multi, okay? And also talk about when we should use it, when we should not use it, when you can recommend it, when you should not recommend it. And then finally, we'll talk about the consumption-based model, how the cloud is priced, okay? The pricing models for the cloud. At the end of the day, we should be comfortable understanding those basic things about cloud. All of this is what makes up part of the cloud concepts that are usually tested for your certification. All right. What questions do you have? Any questions? No questions so far? Mr. Egger, any questions?
No, not so far. Good.
Okay. So what is the reason we're doing this? We're doing this course to be able to prepare for Microsoft certification. There are many reasons why you should get certified for Microsoft, okay? And there are many reasons why you should start with this course. There are many different types of fundamental courses. There's data fundamentals, there's AI fundamentals for artificial intelligence, but we're just going to do Azure fundamentals because that's going to show or demonstrate that you have basic computing knowledge and also that you have gone through a curated guide and gives interest or shows your interest in the cloud. Those are the main things that people look at before they give you employment. So I'll also give you some resources to see all the other certifications out there, but you always want to start with this. For the exam, it's like a 60-minute exam. It's not very pricey. It's $99 or $100 US. Most certifications are more expensive, but with $100 US, getting certified, putting that on your resume, putting that in your social media, whether it's LinkedIn and so on, it makes the recruiters get confident that this guy knows. He has proven that he knows this field. But the things that you need to know before you take this exam are broken down to these three main areas, okay? The three main areas, they just need you to describe things. You don't really need to do them. You don't need to prove them. You just need to describe. If you can describe what the cloud concepts are, if you can describe the architecture of Azure and the services, if you can also describe how it's managed and governed, then you're good. So what are the cloud concepts? Those are some of the things I told you we'll learn today, okay? How it's built, how things were done traditionally, how it's done in the cloud. What is cloud architecture? To understand the different ways in which it's broken down. Just like think about your house. If you have a house, the house is broken down into certain areas. There are different types of houses. There are different ways in which you can go ahead to build it. The services that it provides, there are three main services that are provided on the cloud. The computer or the compute power, the networking power, and then your storage. So those are the three main things. Upon everything that you see on there, they fall under those three categories. We'll talk about those next week. Finally, we'll talk about managing. How do you access it? How do you manage it? How do you create these things? How do you update them? How do you delete them? We'll talk about those and then governance. But at the end of the day, you should be very good at the end of this month. If February goes by without you taking the exam, I'll personally be angry with you. In April goes by without you taking the exam, I'll be angry with you. So if we go back to our calendar, you'll see that today is the 4th of March. We're starting with the first class. When we go through all these classes, by the time it's Easter on the 9th of April, you should have at least registered for this exam for $100, and you should be good so that you can start getting ready for the next level for us to get into more in-depth stuff. All right, sounds good. So it's not going to be technical. I'm going to give you a big picture overview, but if you want me to get technical in order for you to understand it, I'll break it down to you in layman terms, and we should be able to understand very easily. Okay, sounds good. Perfect. So what is cloud computing? Can anybody tell me in their own words what they think cloud computing is? If you're talking, you're on mute, and there's no wrong answer. You don't have a volunteer yet. Mr. Ella, you're still on mute.
Yes, sir.
What do you think cloud computing is in your own words?
I think cloud computing is just a means of storing data in space, like somewhere.
Exactly correct. Exactly correct. I like that idea. Now let's look at it this way. right? There's a few of us here on this call. If we decide that you want to create, you want to start your company, right? Imagine you're working for a big company. Maybe you want to start a military company, or you want to start industry in food, or you want to start a transport company. Whichever company you want to start, let's say you're going to have a bunch of computers and so on and so forth. And also you need those computers to be connected. You need all these people. I mean, think of your little office, your small office or a big office. You have to be able to buy computers to set things up, get them connected to one another so that everybody can get connected and so on and so forth. Rather than having to do these things that traditional way that is always done. If we want to start a new university, we buy computers and put it at that university, buy cables, connect all those computers and so on, create a network and so on and so forth. Someone else is doing this for us. That's what is known as cloud computing. So cloud computing is delivering all these computer services over the internet. Okay. So Microsoft, Amazon, Google, and a bunch of other companies out there, they have taken their time, their money, and built data centers, built big warehouses where they have all these servers that we can store our stuff in there. Those data centers are connected to one another with fiber optic cable all around the world. Okay. So when you want to, rather than you having to rent a place in Douala or rent a place in Limbe and have a server in there and then start figuring out how you're connecting that server to the internet and so on to get all of that done for you, instead of doing it manually, you rent the server that someone else already created. So that's pretty much what cloud computing is. For example, if you use Microsoft Word on your phone or on your computer, you don't get to install that on your machine. You're just using it over the internet. For example, if you're watching Netflix, you don't get to download anything. You're just watching the movie over the internet. Someone else has that movie saved somewhere in a storage, and it's being used by you. So does that make any sense? Does that help? Okay, so still not clear because I have to still break it down based on the services. So normally, let me go ahead and paint the picture here. Normally, if you want to build a company, right, you're going to first start by having a bunch of computers, right? You get one computer. Oops, I can't get my. Okay, there you go. You get one computer, two computers, three computers, and so on. I think I have this disappearing. Let me change it to not disappear. Okay, so you have all these computers that are connected to each other. Instead of saving your money to have these computers, because the computers have to also be connected to one another, and you have a person using this or using that and so on, and then putting money to buy computers, hardware and software and so on, getting somebody to be able to maintain it and manage it each time. Rather than doing that, you just go ahead and pay for someone that has already done it, and they give you access, and you're able to do all those things. Does that make sense?
Yeah, makes sense.
But depending on what service you want, do you want them to just store your pictures? And then fine, if you want them to just store your pictures, you can use Google Photos. It stores your pictures. If you want it to store your movies or you want it to store your documents, you can use Google Drive. You can store your documents. Rather than you storing it on your personal computer or one of these, maybe you store it here and then you have to figure out a network to make sure it's also available for this computer and that computer. Maybe you install a program here and then you need this program to be available on this computer. Instead, you just have the program like Microsoft 365 available on the internet. You can use it on this computer, on that computer, and any other computer on your network. Okay, so those are different services that can get provided for you. Does that make sense?
Yes.
All right, so that said, let's go back and talk about where we were. Where's my mouse? Of course, I can't see. Okay, so that is what cloud computing is. Whatever service you want. Do you want a particular application? They provide it for you. Do you want a Windows computer? They provide it for you. Do you want a Linux computer? They provide it for you. Do you want just a server where you're going to have all your documents or your pictures or your movies? They'll provide it for you. Then you don't have to worry about, I'm running out of space. I have to go and buy more hardware. I have to get someone to connect it. I have to get someone to update it. If you're running out of space, you just click a button. They add you space. If you need less space, you click a button, you reduce the space, and so on and so forth. So just with the power of, just with a click. But then all this infrastructure is provided for you, just like we said, right? You should be able to have storage. You can have databases. You have the networking, the connection of all those different things. As you can see in this picture, the database is there, the cloud is there. They are all interconnected to one another. Okay. And virtual machines. Just so you know, virtual machines. Does anybody know what a virtual machine is? So let me go again and demonstrate real quickly. A virtual machine. Normally, you have a computer that you have created. The computer has a CPU. It has a disk and all whatnot, right? It has your hard drive and the disk, the storage disk. All of those things, you can only run one operating system on top. What is an operating system? An operating system is what connects your hardware. Okay, these are all internal hardware. The other hardware we know about is the screen, the keyboard, the mouse, speakers, all those other stuff. But it connects all of these operating system with your software. Your software could be Microsoft Word, your browser, everything that is running on your computer is the software, the ones that we cannot touch, right? But because you might want to have multiple computers, instead of having just one solid computer, you can go ahead and create copies of other computers inside your computer. Okay, so you want to have this computer, let's say it's using Windows 7. But then you want to create a virtual computer, okay? So it's virtual, it's not real. So you create some space in your computer that's going to have Linux, for instance. Then you have that Linux computer in there, that Linux environment created, that becomes a virtual machine. This virtual machine is still inside your computer. You can create another section again that has a Mac operating system. That also is a virtual computer. So you can have one machine, physical machine that you can touch. But within that one machine, you create virtual machines inside. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So that's what a virtual machine is. So what these guys provide for you is that infrastructure with virtual machines, because they are not physical machines that you can definitely compare with what you have. Does that make sense?
Yes.
All right. How about you, Mr. Egbe? Does that help? Oh, you're still on mute, so we cannot hear you.
I'm good. I'm listening.
Okay, so how does this work? How does it work that you have your computer, somebody else having a computer, and then
Yeah, I was trying to
you're
say
using it?
something. So
Yes, go
basically,
for it.
like a virtual machine is almost like a program inside a computer that works as a separate computer inside the main computer, right?
Exactly. That's just like a computer. But then your computer, let's say this was my computer, right? I decide to just get part of the
Yeah.
hardware to use it for the virtual machine. So if your computer has 200 gigabytes, you decide that I'm going to save 50 gigabytes to run a virtual machine on it. Then the rest of the 150 gigabytes is now yours. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So like it's possible to say for the virtual computer, basically virtual computer which basically mirrored the main computer to have a different operating system. Let's say the virtual computer is having Linux, and then maybe the main computer is having maybe like Windows. Is it possible to operate it as such?
Yes. There are many ways that you can operate it. And I would like to talk about that more in details when we get to the part where we talk about infrastructure as a service. But let me give you a simple example. You decide that you have a house, right? And in that house, you have 3 rooms, 4 rooms, and so on. Depending on the circumstances, you decide that you want to rent out one of the rooms in your house. That person that comes in to rent that room, they will have to have their own toilet inside, right? They have their own kitchen and so on and so forth. So that's still within your compound. So your compound then has the one house, and then that house also has like a guest room or a guest house. The guest room has their toilet and so on. Does that make sense?
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. So again, you can use your entire house. That's fine. But if you realize that you're wasting all these other spaces, let me just go ahead and rent this out. So that's what's actually happening in this case, where you have a room, or should I say not a room, where you have resources that are being allocated. You get a separate rate. You cannot go into that person's room because that is their room. That is their space that you're giving them. They can not go. They can go into your room, but they cannot go into. They can go into your living room, but they can't go into your room. So they have their own dedicated area. You have your own dedicated area per se. Does that make sense? Okay, so we'll talk more about it in future, but I wanted us to talk about shared responsibility model. So what is shared responsibility model? So what I want you to pay attention here is the right part. The very right here, it's showing on-prem. On-prem actually means on premises, okay? So when something is on premises, it's just like the traditional way that we used to do things. For instance, as you can see, the different responsibilities, back in the days, you have to have your own physical data center. Wherever you're working, maybe they have a closet where they have this, the servers that are connected to the whole network, or they have a particular room, which is a server room, or they have a particular building, which is a server building. But all of those make up the data center. And then you have your network, and then the host. The hosts are all the computers that are connected to one another. They also have your operating system. It is your job to install your operating system and update it and make patches and so on. It's also your job to make sure that the network is being controlled. You have firewalls and all whatnot to take care of your network access. You also want to be able to be the one to create your own applications that are going to be used at work, and so on and so forth. Everything, you have control over everything with on-premises. But with shared responsibility model, when you decide to go on the cloud, you start breaking out of having full control. Depending on if you're using infrastructure as a service, infrastructure, again, think about the building, the parts that make up your house. Platform is built on the infrastructure. So after you've gone ahead and take the foundation or dug the foundation per se, you get to now demarcate and say, okay, this is a room, this is that, and so on. I'm going to decide after the foundation has been laid if I'm going to build a mud house or a plank house or a brick house and so on. That's going to be your platform. After that's done, then you have your software, whatever is going to be in there. So with cloud computing, at every point in time, regardless of what you're doing, whether you're doing software as a service, platform as a service, or infrastructure as a service, you are the one responsible for your information and the data. You're the one responsible for the devices that have access to it, for the access that's going in, and you're the one responsible for the identity. For instance, if you're using Netflix is software as a service. You're the one responsible if my phone is going to connect, or if you're giving your access to somebody else, or if you're creating an account for the kids or an account for someone else, and so on. So all of that is your responsibility, you, the customer. But you also want to remember the cloud provider. In this case, we're talking of Azure, so we're going to talk about Microsoft. Microsoft is the one responsible for that physical data center, the network, and the host. As you can see, all these colors showing up here. So Microsoft will always be responsible for those. But depending on the service model, if it's SaaS, PaaS, or IaaS, which is infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, or software as a service, then you might be the one in charge of operating systems, or they might be the control networks, the applications, and identity infrastructure. Just a word here. Whenever I talk of applications, I'm talking about software. Okay, applications, software, programs, all the things that run on your computer, all the things that run on your operating system. Okay, does that make sense? Everybody okay with this so far?
Oh, yes.